I just finished my academic upgrading and I got a 93% in high school biology and math and an 89% in chemistry. But here's the context. 6 months ago, I didn't know what stoichiometry was. I dropped out of middle school and I have a degree in literature. I hadn't touched a science textbook in 12 years. So if you're an adult learner like me, or if you just feel like your brain's a little bit rusty, here's the messy reality of how I did it and what I wish I'd done differently. In the beginning, I wasn't really studying. I was spiraling. I had so much self-doubt. I knew I wanted to go to med school, but I didn't believe that I could actually do it. And I spent embarrassing amounts of time Googling Plan B nursing schools, not because I actually wanted to be a nurse, but because I was terrified. I wasted so much energy trying to convince myself that I was making the right choice, instead of just doing the work. And because I was scared, I overcompensated. I was like, okay, I've never studied science in my life, so I need to grind. So I started logging my hours like a lawyer billing a client. I would log every single minute that I spent staring at textbooks and also every single minute that I didn't. I told myself, if I don't study 8 hours of pure focus today, I am failing. Sure, it worked for a bit until it didn't. To hit those 8 hours a day, I sacrificed almost everything. I stopped going to the gym. I stopped cooking myself proper meals. I stopped going on dates with my partner. There were no weekends, no holidays, no off days. And then the flu happened. I was knocked out cold for a week. But what's worse was that I was already burned out. So that 1 week set me back like 2 months. I felt like I was drowning, and that was my wake up call. I realized that studying 10 hours a day doesn't matter if you're going to crash and burn a week later. What's the point? And that's how I learned consistency over intensity. I know it's cliche, but it's cliche for a reason, because it's true. Once I stopped obsessing over logging 8 hours a day and just focused on showing up every day for 4 to 5 hours, my grades actually went up. Now, the other problem was my brain itself. In literature, you read. So naturally, I tried to read the science textbooks. I would literally read out loud to keep myself from falling asleep. I would read standing up. I tried everything, but I kept dozing off 10 minutes into a chapter and nothing stuck. And then, after a few months in, I realized I'm a visual learner. Staring at blocks of text is useless to me. So I stopped reading textbooks. I started watching videos and looking at diagrams. I stopped trying to write down every single word the teacher said and started drawing the processes. It doesn't have to be a Picasso level drawing, just scribble a bunch of circles if that makes sense to you. The biggest game changer for me, though, was a study technique called blurting. I just take a blank sheet of paper, I hide my notes, and I force myself to scribble down everything I remember about a topic. And then I check my notes. Anything I missed, I write in red. And that red ink is the only thing I care about. That's what I don't know, and that's what I need to be cramming into my brain. I also realized that I needed to hear it. My partner would just get startled sometimes because I'll just start explaining the endocrine system to the wall. But my logic is if I can't explain it out loud, I don't actually know it. To get the 93%, I had to go one step further. I don't just memorize, I role play. I pretend I'm the professor and I ask myself, if I wanted to trick students on this topic, how would I write the question? And then I go ahead and write that question myself and try to solve it. Thing is, once you start thinking like the test maker, You stop studying everything and start studying exactly what they want you to know. Also, you can't study every subject the same way, obviously, but I had to learn that the hard way. So, first, math. Math was mostly muscle memory for me. I learned the basics in Korea years ago, and I just had to do a lot of practice problems until my hand and my brain remembered what to do. But the biggest cheat code for math, I would say, is graphs. For example, it was my first time learning trigonometry, and I didn't really understand the sine, cosine, and tangent graphs at first. But then I started drawing them, and I memorized the basic shape of the graphs, including, where the roots are, where the asymptotes are. And once I started doing that, it started to make more sense to me, and it made things easier. And I know they let you use graphing calculators in some countries, but I would highly, highly recommend trying to memorize the basic shapes of the graphs of each function. And from my experience, it saves you a ton of time during exams. Next, we got biology. Again, my rule for biology is simple. If you can draw the diagram, you can pass. The problem with biology, though, is that there's always too much information and not enough time. So I feel like you just have to get used to cramming a lot of information into your brain very quickly. And that means sometimes you just have to memorize something, even if you don't understand it 100%. And lastly, chemistry. Chemistry was the hardest for me. You have to understand the concept, memorize the rules, and do the math, which is a lot of mental juggling. How fun, right? Honestly, I haven't figured out a shortcut to master chemistry yet. I feel like you just have to do a lot of practice problems until something finally clicks. With that said, if you know any shortcuts to mastering chemistry, please let me know in the comments because I'm desperate. I also realized that you can't just rely on willpower. You need a routine. Willpower is a bit. I know there are some incredible people out there who can just power through every obstacle in their lives with sheer willpower, but that did not work for me. I consider myself a pretty disciplined person, but there were days where all I wanted to do in the morning was crawl back into bed and cry all day. And I'm just telling you, there were a lot of those days. And arguably, the only thing that kept me from falling entirely apart was having a script. I stopped waiting to feel like studying, because honestly, I rarely ever did. So I built a loop. Wake up, coffee, study. Lunch, study. Dinner, gym, study. When you get up in the morning and you already know exactly what you're going to do for the next 12 hours, in what order, at what time, you don't have to spend energy making decisions. You just follow the script. I know this is just high school upgrading and I haven't even started the real degree yet. But coming from a literature background with zero science knowledge, this actually felt really, really good. Because 6 months ago, I didn't know what hyperthyroidism was. I didn't know what electroplating was. And now I do. The world just makes a little more sense to me now. So if you're thinking about going back to school, or if you're just worried you're not a science person, just build a system and you'll be fine. If a middle school dropout with a literature background and zero science knowledge can do this, then trust me, you can do this too.